Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Shackelford, and I serve as the Director of Program Curation here at Upper House. I am delighted to welcome you to today's event, Creating Just Workplaces, in partnership with Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development. Thank you for your support. This conversation reflects the convergence of two content themes we care deeply about here at Upper House: leadership and justice. We want to equip people in all fields and vocations to be exemplary leaders and to critically engage with systemic and cultural realities that shape individuals and communities so that all may flourish. Today's panel features the research of anthropologist Dr. Jeske, who has studied work and meaning amidst some of the highest unemployment and entrenched racism in the world, alongside the expertise of local leaders, Anthony Cooper and Vanessa McDowell, who carry vast experience in job training and development, creating equitable organizations, and diligently serving minority and marginalized populations in our community for decades. I would love to invite you to share your comments and questions as we go along in the conversation today. I believe you'll be able to see a speech bubble in the top right of your video screen if the chat is not already alongside the right of your video. So we'd love for you to submit a question there and involve your comments. Please join me in welcoming each of our speakers today. Jeske is an associate professor of cultural anthropology at Wheaton College and author of several books, including her latest release, The Laziness Myth, Narratives of Work and the Good Life in South Africa. She earned her PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and has worked in microfinance, refugee resettlement, community development, and teaching while living in Nicaragua, China, and South Africa. She lives in an old Wisconsin farmhouse named The Sanctuary, complete with a dozen chickens, several pigs, innumerable weeds, 2 children, and 1 wonderful husband. Welcome, Christine. Next, I'd love to welcome Anthony Cooper Sr., who uses his life experiences to help men in the Madison community in his role as Vice President of Reentry Services and External Relationships for Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development. A devoted husband and father of 2 sons, he dedicates his time to ensure that men leaving prison are reacclimated to society. Anthony brings 10 years of job development and mentoring experience to this role. He has served as a placement specialist, corporate recruiter, fatherhood program facilitator at the Urban League of Greater Madison, and as owner and director of Opportunity Tree Incorporated. As the director of Reentry Services, Anthony is responsible for networking with employers, partnering with community organizations and the Department of Corrections, mentoring and establishing mentor relationships, and operating the Nehemiah House and Dignity House. Anthony has a strong passion for changing the view of incarcerated individuals in society so they no longer feel imprisoned when released. Anthony, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. Next, I'd like to welcome Vanessa McDowell. She is the CEO of the YWCA here in Madison and the first Black woman to hold the position in YWCA Madison's 108-year history. Appointed by Governor Evers to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in 2019, Vanessa was also named one of the 35 most influential African Americans in Wisconsin by Madison 365 in 2018. Vanessa works to leverage voices that have been silenced and to empower others to live out their purpose. She brings to her work an empowerment model that aligns with the YWCA's mission to eliminate racism and empower women. Prior to joining the YWCA, Vanessa worked for UW-Madison's Equity and Inclusion Laboratory and was the executive assistant to the pastor for Mount Zion Baptist Church. Vanessa, welcome and thanks for joining us. So great. So welcome to you all. I just want to let our viewers and listeners today know that we are just in for a wonderful conversation, an organic conversation, and I'm here to offer questions, but I'm inviting you guys to respond to one another, to share stories, to share advice, to speak, and give us practical strategies on creating just workplaces and bringing justice to the workplace setting. So I'd love to start and hear from all of you about how does your role interface with creating just workplaces? So beyond the bios that I read, I'd love for you to give voice to the specific perspective you're bringing in the work that you do, the work of your organization. So Anthony, can we start with you?
Oh, well, I was going to say ladies first, but hey.
Okay.
So I think one, especially for us, is that the fact that where we have a diverse workplace, and also hiring men and women who have been incarcerated, being able to show them that it's possible to be able to do something different with your life, but then also being able to allow those men and women to also set the bar and be able to have them in higher positions and be able to utilize their skills and expertise, and not only in their background as far as criminal background, but also they have a lot more to offer. Because again, this is something that I talk about quite a bit as far as, even for myself, that a man who has been incarcerated, I'm so much more than just my incarceration. Those men and women are so much more than just their incarceration. They have dreams and hopes and things that they want to be able to add to the community. We make sure that we express that, we make sure that we live that, and we also make sure that that they have a say in it is what they see to be a part of the community. So I'll leave it at that. I can talk all day. So,
That's great. Vanessa.
Sure. So with YWCA Madison, our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We do that in 3 areas: race and gender equity work, housing and shelter, and job training and transportation. And so we have numerous opportunities, I would say, for individuals to get involved within our community to create just workplaces. We do something called Creating Equitable Organizations, which is a partnership between us and organizations that say they want to be equitable. And we spend 2 to 3 years, really doing deep work with them around what does that mean. And that work really has to do with being honest, having an honest conversation about, where you are as an organization and how it feels to be in your organization. And then also, I would say internally, I spent about a year and a half when I first became the CEO, doing some internal work with our own staff, and really getting to a place where I really wanted us to walk the talk, and really wanted us to be a place where people felt like no matter what your background is, that you belong here and that your contributions matter and that you matter. And so this is probably the most, not only, I would say, physically diverse that we've probably ever been in history, including the director's team. But it's really a space that I believe, and hopefully my staff would say the same, that just feels different to be a person of color working within this organization.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Christine, your role with interfacing with creating just workplaces.
Yeah, so a little storyline. I grew up in Whitewater, Wisconsin, which I tell people was white as it was named. The world that I lived in was just predominantly white, and the conversations about diversity for me really wasn't exposed to it all until college. And so I represent somebody who's coming into this conversation later in life. And there were some sort of pivotal moments in my college years, but also then after college, I started living outside of the United States in places where I, as a white person, was the minority, and heard people's stories in Nicaragua, China, and then eventually got an MBA and moved to South Africa and was working with a microfinance business development organization there. And that experience working with this organization, it basically closed down after 2 years and didn't work. And what intrigued me was the ways that people talked about what didn't work about this business development organization. And people just kept saying that it doesn't work because African people are lazy. And that was sort of the extent of the explanation that I kept hearing over and over again. And I knew there was more to it because I watched what it took for people to actually start businesses and retain businesses in a really racially segregated and inequitable setting. And so I got interested in learning more about that. I left the organization, it closed, but a few years later, had the opportunity to do a PhD and realized what I really wanted to study is what was going on. What are the challenges that affect people trying to get into equitable, flourishing work? And so I went back to South Africa, spent about the fifth of 5 years there. And my research, I'm a cultural anthropologist, which means I do lots of interviews. So I did over 100 interviews with people mainly in low-wage workplaces and unemployed or underemployed people. And also participant observation. So a lot of that year was just hanging out with people in their workplaces, spending a day or 2 or 3 at a yogurt factory and another day at a forestry company, and listening and hearing and trying to find ways to write about what the experience is like in a low-wage workplace. And then since then, I've been looking at literature in academia too, and seeing how these same kind of narratives can shape the ways we do academia and scholarship about workplaces, and trying to bring equity into writing about vocation and work as well.
Thank you. So with all of that experience on the table, I'd love to open it up for some comments around what are guiding principles that are important in creating just workplaces. And I think along with this goes the question, how do you know if your workplace is just? Where does that discernment process come in? So guiding principles that are important, and how do we know the state of justice or the justness of our workplace? Vanessa, I'm gonna call on you first.
I know.
The queen of creating equitable organizations.
I would say, maybe some of the ingredients, I would say, having a just workplace is really moving beyond sort of this, say, diversity and inclusion kind of conversation. A lot of times we're having sort of a conversation about, a lot of times you'll hear the reference to dancing, right? That, your diversity, you may get invited to the party, inclusion, you're asked to dance. And then, kind of what's after that, right? Or you can have the analogy around a table, right? And being invited to the table kind of concept. But really, to me, one of the major ingredients about a just workplace is, do I feel like I belong here? Do I feel like in my identity and who I am, I can show up as myself every day and not have to show up as someone else? That, to me, is something that is very important to me in regards to a environment feeling just. And I think, in regards to your second question, you said.
Yeah, so how do we know if that state of belonging is in place? How do we know if it's just?
You'll know.
Right.
You will know. I would say the attitudes and the sense of morale within your organization. If there is sort of this low sense of morale, something's not right. I think in retention, you will know when people are leaving your organization, or maybe there's a certain group of people that are leaving your organization. That should be a sign. You also know in terms of the culture. If it feels like a culture where it's not welcoming, where there are opportunities where people are feeling like, yeah, you have this quote unquote open door policy, but nobody comes to your door, something wrong, right? So to me, that's how I'd answer.
That's good. That's good.
I love your answer, Vanessa. I must say that, but because I think that and also I think of even being able to make sure that you're having those honest conversations with your staff also, right? And really being able to say, hey, look, this is the type of culture that we're trying to create. Are you willing to be a part of this? Right. Because, and of course, you do have your staff that sometimes that may say, oh, yeah, do that. But at the same time, over time, those things will show. Right. We want to be able to make sure that, one, we reflect the community. Two, that what we are speaking about on a regular basis, that's also being practiced in our office. There's a saying that we say in our community quite a bit. You have to be able to make sure your home is straight first, right? And being able to make sure that you're taking care of home, you're taking care and making sure your home is set up in a way that where if I say, hey, Melissa, Christine, you all, why don't you go ahead and come over? Vanessa's been over to the house before, so you know, come on over. But you want to make sure that it's a welcoming environment for you all as well. You have to make sure those things are happening. But also, I think in return, you want to be able to hire, but then also partner with other like-minded organizations, right? I think those things are very important, because if you're not doing that, then we're not. And I'll use a little bit of street slang here for a second. We're not spreading the love that what needs to happen in order to really be effective change in our community. And it's some stuff that I think I want to probably be able to tap on, but I'll wait until Christine starts talking a little bit later, because I think that those things are very important. And it's the same thing in any workplace. You have to be a reflection of the community that you serve.
It's good.
Yeah. I like that too, like spreading the love. One of the things that I heard people say over and over again was, you have to be respected. And I started asking people, what does respect look like? And what does it not look like? And just paying attention to when people describe themselves as respected. Because I found in South Africa, when I heard from people that they had left jobs, I would ask why. And again, it wasn't, they weren't paid well enough. It had to do with respect. It's like, how were you treated? Was your dignity honored? Were you seen as a person? Did people care about your life? Was there gratitude for what you did? So for me, like this idea of respect comes down to, were you trusted? Did people take risks and allow you to do the things that you have the skills and gifts to do? Kind of like what Anthony was saying about, people who are coming out of prison are not just a person coming out of prison. Like, you have so much to bring. So respect is trusting people to bring what they add to an organization. I think it has to do with, are you really willing to redistribute the resources and power to people in your company, and pay them what they deserve? Not just say, oh, you've done great, so now do some more work, but you've done great, and we acknowledge that by giving you time off and appropriate benefits from the company, and appreciation. Are people being grateful? Are they actually seeing and paying attention to what is happening in the company, and saying thank you in audible and demonstrated ways?
So one thing to make this really practical, I'm wondering, what questions do we need to be asking or noticing about our workplaces? So this might just be a quick rephrase of some of the things that were just said, but I'm thinking of people watching in different professional settings. What are they asking? What are they looking? They're looking for that sense of belonging. They're asking, something I noticed, Vanessa, you said, was that it's not just that the open door policy is posted, it's actually used. Like that there's a behavioral demonstration of that culture. Is there anything else any of you would highlight in that, in terms of just the questions we need to be asking about ourselves?
I would say, who's on your team?
Right.
A lot of times, you have people that just think like you. That's not helpful in an organization where you're trying to move something. You need people that are not just going to be your yes people. You gotta have people that are going to challenge you to do something different. And so you got to ask questions about, what does my team makeup look like? Not only in terms of, I think one of the, I would say, missteps of a lot of organizations is they think they have, I would say, done something by changing what their particular team looks like. And so the sort of diversity part of it, right? But they don't change what maybe their team thinks like, or they don't think about what pieces of your team are missing. What sort of gifts, if you will, are missing from your team that could enhance your team, I would say.
Good.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. You about to say something?
Go for it.
Vanessa, again, I always take my hat off to her. You very, I think I will almost echo that. But at the same time, I think of really, so and some people, and the people that are in managerial occupations may disagree with me on this. A lot of times I like to hire people who one, have different beliefs, and who are always willing to at least challenge. I mean, and to me, I don't look at challenges as fights, right? I look at challenges of one, making sure that I'm aware of what's going on, and people who are straight to the point. The fact that, me and Vanessa, we know each other, we're friends. Even when I got on the car, I said, "Hey, what's up, sis?" Because that's how we greet each other, no matter where we're at, right? And so one of the things is with that, but also she's a part of my circle of people who I can say that no matter what, we can always be honest with each other and say, regardless if we disagree, right? Those are the type of people that, for me personally, I have to have around me. Right, because that provides a different type of balance, and also, that also provides a different type of dignity for myself to say, okay, hey, look, maybe I'm doing something wrong here, right? Or maybe and kind of allows me as a person in our organization to also think outside the box, right? You have to bring you have to be able to be okay with that. You have to be able to be okay with someone saying, "Hey, look, I don't believe in doing things that way," and honor and respect, right, to what Christine was saying, to honor and respect to what that person said, and in turn to being okay with asking the reason why. Yeah. Right, because it can be some ways of your own thinking that needs challenging, but also it can be some ways of someone else's thinking that needs some challenging. And sometimes people will look at a challenge when someone says challenge. That's a hard word. Like, hey, why you got to challenge me, right? Why I got to be a challenge? But every time we talk, it's a challenge. But it's more of a as you all know, I've talked to all y'all separately. I'm a little goofy from time to time, but I think that where just like I enjoy being able to talk to you all in community. That's the way how our organizations have to feel. That's the way how we have to work. Because and as you're working in the community, it doesn't just while you're in the walls of your building, it also has to echo of what you're doing out in the community as well. Outside of that, because if it doesn't, some things are not going to line up. I'm sorry, it just won't. No matter who you are, what organization, if you're a $80 million organization or not, those are just the things that you have to be able to make sure are lining up, and there's some type of balance in it all for you to be able to do the work that you're doing in a community. Similar to what Vanessa was saying, you have to be more than just that organization that's saying we have an open door policy. You have to reflect that. Yeah, in your work.
Thinking as you're talking about an example of experiencing that in my own work. So I finished up this manuscript on the laziness myth, and it's all about race, and it's all about people in low-wage jobs. And I realized, I don't want to send in this manuscript without making sure that I have some really honest feedback from some people who are not white middle class academics. I know that I will have blind spots, and I remember at this point of thinking, okay, this is the test. Do I know people who I've developed a trust with that they'll be honest? Are there people in my organization who have that feeling of security and inclusion and belonging in the organization, that they will feel comfortable enough as colleagues to have that conversation? And it's also kind of a test of are they so much in the numerical minority still that they're completely inundated with this kind of question? Are they the one person who's like, okay, you're the Black person in the organization, let's ask you everything about race? Or do we actually have a community of people who are able to admit, you know what, I have a blind spot in this. Can we work together on this and laugh about it? And will you be honest and give me the feedback about what I'm working on? So, yeah, and I think we were talking about how this is not just a conversation about how do you lead an organization, but some of this is how do you be a coworker? And you can, what are my relationships like in my organization as a coworker? Am I just making friends with the people who seem to have the most in common with me by whatever social marker is dominating how I see myself? Or am I really developing a network across this organization where, we're all a part of this together?
And I was just going to add to that, one of the questions that, I have been challenging sort of my supervisors with is, how do you receive feedback? And not just my supervisors, just to everyone in the organization. How do you receive feedback? And I think that's an important question, because if you don't receive feedback well, then you are unlikely to change, because you think you know everything, but is there a examination that you can do around, how do I receive feedback? And maybe there's some changes I need to make so that I can receive feedback better, constructive feedback, right? So that there is not this sort of intimidation. Because again, when you're asking the previous question about what are some signs, well, if people are feeling intimidated from even coming to ask you a question or bring something to you, that's a sign. Right. So I would ask kind of that too, like, how do I receive feedback and how do I deal with conflict? I think there are some differences culturally. I'll just be honest with how different folks deal with conflict. And what I've noticed is that there has to be sort of a understanding of what does conflict really mean and what does it look like. And sometimes conflict is healthy. Don't be scared of it. Sometimes we need to have conflict, because then that lets me know that, oh, we're getting ready to grow. Something's getting ready to happen.
I kind of want to go on that bunny trail, because so Anthony, you talked about challenge and being comfortable with being challenged and feedback and conflict. And so I'm just wondering, like, what is it, how do we turn the needle on that in terms of our own personal development, the organizational development? Vanessa, I'm wondering what exercises you might walk organizations through. You used the phrase change teams early on, and I wondered how those might come into play. But just is there anything else there in terms of welcoming in? I think we can get addicted to comfort, and we don't need to feel more comfortable. And so how do we, what does it look like to build that, to build those skills? How do we insert those into our organizations?
I feel honestly just being able to continue to ask those questions, right? And really being able to allow people, kind of goes right back to being able to allow people to be themselves. Because one thing of me just saying, hey, I'm asking you these questions because I want to know, I want us to build, and so on and so forth. But also I think of being able to say, you know what, this is a space that I want you to be comfortable in, right? Even though I may be your supervisor, that doesn't mean I'm asking you these questions so we can both learn and grow together, because I value you. And I think sometimes we kind of get away from just really just having the bold, honest conversations with individuals or with our team. I used to be a corporate recruiter, and I feel like even in that setting, there was times where people weren't really having the honest, bold conversations and say, "Hey, look, this is what's going on. This is this is how I'm feeling. How do you feel about this?" Right? How do you feel about this? Like, there's something that of course, we're in a pandemic, and I still do them every once in a while, but of course, 6 feet apart. But I have to say that because I believe my wife is listening to me. 6 feet apart, right? So being able to have walking meetings, right? Because a lot of things come out in a walk. A lot of times you're able to just have real conversations in a walk, because I want you to understand that this is more. What we are doing here is more than what is happening in these 4 walls, right? And the fact that, again, it kind of goes back to a person really understanding that you have value in our organization. That's why I brought you on, right? And mean that. And even highlighting those things as well, throughout time. And it's not always going to be easy, right? Because for some people, that's new. That's even new for them. To be able to have someone who's willing to hear them out on a different level, and to hear some of the things that what they don't like and what they do like as well. I believe Vanessa may have said this too, but and even in my outside of my work life, I don't like to have yes men around me. I just that just, you know, I don't need that. I need people who are gonna be straight up with me, who can talk to me out of love, right? And out of love doesn't mean that, hey, okay, Anthony, just, you know, let me just pat you on your back. Yeah, no, Anthony, hey, look, man, get your stuff right. You know, think about X, Y, and Z. I appreciate that more, because that's how we grow, and that's how we grow as a community together.
Yeah, I would just say our you know, the work that we do in terms of like a change team, right? We have one that we do at YWCA, and then we also train other organizations to create change teams as well. But really the idea around it is you're getting a group of folks together from different backgrounds, from different parts of the organization, that come from all different levels of the organization, that are sort of leading the charge for change in the organization, right? So it's not just on one person. And I think that sometimes Madison has that bad is we'll hire diversity and inclusion, one person, and that's their work, and they're supposed to change a whole organization that has 10,000 people, you know. But when you create a change team, the ownership starts to be on more than one individual, and you're starting to sort of create a different culture with a group of people, sort of like a cohort, if you will, of people that are dedicated to making those real changes within the organization. And so what we see is folks are really taking ownership because they're a part of the change. They're a part of creating change. When we have change team meetings, it's not me coming in as the CEO saying, here's what you need to do. It's me sitting as a part of the change team and saying,